Thank you very much. I'm really excited to host this panel. A short story. 2 days ago, before I was ready to come over, I was walking the dog with my son. Her name is Crazy. That's the nickname. And I was sharing with my son that I'm going to moderate a panel around AI. And I asked him, Omer, what do you think the difference between AI and traditional software? Now, he's a 13-year-old boy. I didn't expect him to come up with an answer, and I was ready to take that as a learning experience. And I was surprised by his answer. It told me, if you take traditional software and you feed input to the system one day and come back after a week, I expect to get the same output. With AI, I expect the output to be slightly different because I want to see it learning and getting improved over time. So I was really blown away by his answer, and I think that captured the nature of AI. Now, in this panel, we're going to discuss the business implication of AI and to see how it's getting real business value. And we have here David from Aldo, if you want to introduce yourself.
So hi, everybody. First of all, I want to apologize for my sultry radio voice. I come from the Great White North up in Montreal, and we don't understand warm weather in the winter. So I've been with Aldo for 5 years. I take care of their business intelligence, their analytics, and their data governance practices. And as fun little fact, I also teach at one of our universities, helping the youth learn about all of those fantastic topics.
So I think I spent a lot of time introducing myself this morning, so I will not introduce myself, but I'm Jaya.
Hi, I'm George. I work at TripAdvisor. I manage a team there of data scientists and analysts. And I've been doing data science for quite a long time, and I've always been more of a technical side. And pretty recently, about 6 months ago, I moved into more broader analytics. And that has been a challenge, very exciting for me. And I came to this conference actually more to learn from people what they're doing. And so I'm very pleased to be here.
Perfect. Thank you. So in the last couple of days, we've seen and heard many applications of AI. And since we want to get real examples from you guys, can you share with us some of the AI projects that have been implemented in your organization that are delivering high business value?
So I think it's really going to boil down to one of the things that has come across a lot in this session, these sessions as well, is what are we defining as AI? Because there's a lot of different ways this conversation can go when you're talking about AI. I mean, if you're talking about automating a process, using statistical modeling to drive a business response, that's one thing, and we have done some projects in that space. And if you're talking, though, like the more fancy, funky stuff that you have in AI, like computer vision or similarity recommendations based on that, then we are actually working on those projects as well. The idea, though, is that with AI, just like with any other analytical program you're going to want to deploy, you need to start with a business proposition, with a business value, an opportunity that you're trying to solve for. And as long as you feel that you are capable with the people that you have, with the tools that you have to address that situation or that problem, then you should. And if you think about the world of retail, so I'm part of this fantastic world of retail, we have so much data. We have so much opportunity to leverage that data, to automate processes in order to drive business value. And one of the really fun things that we're working on right now is computer vision. It's leveraging deep learning neural nets in order to be able to match similar products together. And I think that's one of the places where we can drive value across multiple places within the organization.
So similar to you, it all depends upon what you mean by AI. If it is predictive modeling, if you will, that is running in an automated fashion, we certainly do that a lot on our marketing and content side. We do a lot of work on understanding what kind of content we should buy, how we should invest in content. We do a lot of machine learning for that. In terms of computer vision and a lot of the deep learning work that we do, some of that is still nascent. I think it is really important for us to understand how to do this in a way that is fast, it's appropriate. You don't have the false positives, false negatives, because that could hurt us in our customer experience. So there we are not really truly automated. It's more prototyping, we've tested it out and so on. We do a lot of work with recommendations and personalization, that is all machine learning as well. We do a lot of optimization as well as part and parcel of thinking about how we should target advertisements and things like that. So in a lot of different places, a lot of different techniques, some of them further along than others. So that's kind of where we are.
Okay.
Yeah, so we work on several different areas in machine learning. We talk about computer vision, recommender systems. I can think of a couple of examples that we delivered a lot of value. One was a fraud detection algorithm that we developed, and this is a natural language. There's basically it's conversations, messages, and there's a certain information that is not supposed to be shared. And so we deployed machine learning algorithms, traditional machine learning algorithms to solve that problem. And it was a big success, just standard NLP. But it is a very challenging problem. There were a lot of corner cases. So we went further and we built a deep learning algorithm for that. And the results were very, very good. And that's what we have in production right now. The other case is, I think, search engine marketing. It's just marketing. We built models for optimizing the way we spend our advertising money, and we were able to have tremendous success. Again, significant reducing costs and also increasing in revenue.
Got it. Thank you. What would you consider are the main factors to choose the right AI project? You might have a situation where you have high value, but maybe the business is not ready to adopt, or maybe the business is ready and the technology is not there, or the data is not ready. How do you go about that?
That's a good question. I think in most cases, you're going to have to always start with a business value. I mean, there are tons of projects that we all want to do. I mean, we're all, can I say, data geeks in the room for the most part. And we all want to play with all these fancy algorithms, and we all want to build the latest and greatest in deep learning and all that stuff. But the whole build it and they will come thing, I really am not a big believer in that. I believe more in there's an opportunity or there's a problem. I mean, and the opportunity can then turn into a problem and vice versa. And you have to select the one that you feel is going to be understood, applicable, and generating of enough value in your organization that once you start building that out with your user base, you're going to be able to sell it to them. And you don't want to just be building stuff to build stuff. That just has never worked in the history of time, and it's one of the reasons why you see, the previous presentation, $1.4 trillion of investments that don't pan out. There's a reason for that, and I'm at fault for it too, I'm sure, in many cases, because I want to push those fun projects, but your business has to be able to follow, and that's a culture shift. And we had talks about culture over here and at other events as well. Culture is a very big factor in people being able to accept the fact that there's an algorithm out there that's going to be able to help me. It's not going to replace me, and I think that's political naiveness to go and say that this is going to replace people, because you tell them it's going to replace them and you're probably not going to get your funding. But you have to be able to shift that culture into that data-driven mindset.
So I think the place that we've had the most issues in leveraging AI well, if you will, is I don't think that the researchers talk a lot with the business owners. Like, there's a tendency to think of the problems that business has, and like you said, they want to build it, and they expect everyone's going to come. And then there's a lot of disappointment because no one comes, and no one's ready to operationalize it. So that has been something that we've been trying to break people off the habit of doing that. Working on a product strategy perhaps will be helpful because you're thinking about how do you build these products that are sustainable, long-lived, and so on. That will allow the researchers or the data scientists to start thinking about how they actually build these algorithms. The other thing that I think we face is that our business owners are not really ready to operationalize these models. They really don't know how to do it. And till we have recently brought in people that have actually operationalized algorithms, it was really hard for any of these algorithms to be operationalized. So we've actually spent a lot of time with our business owners to say, if we were to build this, how will you use it? What is the KPI that this should drive? And all of these things, I think there's an educational aspect with the business teams that you also have to think about, and you actually have to do that work to allow your AI to be successful.
Right.
I agree with Jaya. I think in many cases, our business partners, they don't know what is possible. And it's part of our role, I think, to kind of educate them and show them use cases. And in a lot of cases, we have to come up with the ideas ourselves and try to sell to them. And over time, they start to build that understanding. But regarding how to choose the best, how to spend your efforts in terms of projects, in my experience, we have, at least in my role, we have 3 areas. One is projects that come from our stakeholders, and they ask, I want this functionality, I want to solve this problem. So that's like a third of the projects. Another third is projects that we are always working on. So recommender systems, we're always improving recommender systems. Ranking algorithms, we're always improving ranking algorithms. So there's always efforts trying to build the better model and improve. And finally, I think there are projects that nobody asked us to do, but we think there is a cool technology, new algorithm, new tool that we think we can build or can use. Those are high-risk projects. A lot of cases, they don't work out, but sometimes they do. And then once they do, we then go to the business and say, look, we can do this. Let's use this. So we try to split our workload like that way.
Cool. Thanks. So we talked about some of the current implementation of AI and some of the criteria to choose the right one. What do you think is going to be next? What are the areas we'll see AI evolving into in the organization?
I think it'll depend very heavily on your organization and where your strategic focus is. If I think of my industry, the footwear industry, for example, I could see AI being used in so many different places. Obviously in personalization, right? Because I'm in retail, I'm in contact with consumers, I want to be able to have proper communication with them, I want to be able to share information with them, understand them. So definitely in that aspect, AI is going to be playing a big role in the near future. It may already be playing in certain industries, but don't forget some industries, get to that AI level a little bit slower than others and play catch up or just didn't need to at a certain point to be in that area. If I think of another aspect of the footwear industry, you look at my shoes and, just classification of my products. And yes, right now there's attributes that get created. So, when you have a pair of shoe, you have 80 to 100 different attributes to define that pair of shoe in your system. Well, those attributes are thought up by humans who are defining the product, which is fantastic because they're highly creative. But at the same time, what happens is that you have things that may end up by being misclassified or that have the wrong attributes. And therefore, when you want to start to build smarter models, you're missing accurate data. And so being able to use, for example, a computer vision program to pick up an image and tell you, hey, this is actually a high-heeled pump with a 4-inch heel and an open toe and an anklet bracelet and whatever. Those are definitely factors where I see AI being able to play a role in supporting the organization. And then we can go even farther and think of how do we leverage natural language processing in helping define what is going to be the next big fashion trend. Because you have a lot of articles that get written and blogs and all that stuff. And, you know, designers get to read a certain amount of information, but is it possible to think that a person is capable of ingesting and reading as many articles as get generated every single day? This is why things like you've seen Watson being used in the medical industry, because it is capable of ingesting all those medical journals a lot faster than an actual doctor would be able to. But then that adds also the curating of that content piece. And that's where I still strongly believe that AI will play a very heavy part, but there will always be that human interaction to help guide the model into what content is interesting to be able to consume and accurate, right? That veracity of the information that's being fed into the model is what's going to help that model be strong and be valuable for the business.
In our case, clearly we're going to continue to improve on things that we already do. But I think a lot of emphasis that we will be putting over the next year or two is more about understanding the quality of the video that we transmit, understanding any quality issues, being able to alert and monitor before our customers actually start calling us. We'll be using, I'm sure, NLP a lot more as we think about how to reduce the, the customer experience, folks that we cannot have scale at the same rate of growth. So those are areas, I think, it's going to be more about operational efficiencies that we will be focusing on over the next couple of years.
Yeah, in my case, I think what we are focusing on is not necessarily like the use case of machine learning and the big application, but actually how do we streamline the process of development and putting models in production. So we already have a pipeline for putting models in production. We can do things like deploy models in less than a week, but I think there is a lot more that can be done there. The goal for me would be to have a one-click deployment of a model, for example, right? So right now the deployment process still takes a lot of engineering. It's fast, but it still takes a lot of work. So how can we automate all of that process and basically becomes just a data science, putting the model out there, and when it's ready, it just clicks a button and it's live. So that's the goal for us.
Got it. So it sounds like we are continuing the same journey. It's kind of evolution of the information system that we're talking about, making the business more efficient and generating more revenue, leveraging machine learning capabilities. So next, I would like to tap into your experience, and if you can share with your colleagues here some of the pitfalls that you've experienced and maybe a good advice how to avoid them.
So some of the pitfalls I think that we're all going to face goes back to what you were just talking about, which is how do we get this into production quickly? Because we're going to be building models and they're going to be fun and they're going to be cool and they're going to be generating value, but then how do you take it from having coded something on the side, prototyped it, and then deploying it across the organization? And I think that's one of the big pitfalls that we're going to be facing with AI in the future and even now, to be honest. The other big place where we're going to have challenges is going to continue to be in terms of the quality of the data that we have in order to be able to build those models and come out with the right predictions. You build a model on faulty data, you're going to have faulty predictions. It's inevitable. I'm not teaching anybody anything new. But then how do you ensure that you have that right level of quality in terms of the data that you're going to be feeding into it? And that's where you need to make sure that you have a proper governance program in place, that you have a proper data quality management team in place to ensure that the proper data elements or the ones that you need are properly governed. And there was something that was said yesterday that I thought was great and I totally adhere to it. It was the concept of that radioactive data. Like, what is that data element that actually really matters that you need to govern? Because you don't need to govern everything to the same crazy level, right? Like, different data elements warrant different needs of governance. And then the other thing that we're going to have to be very cautious with, and we were talking about it at the roundtable a little earlier, is all the regulations that are coming out from so many different governmental institutions, whether they are in our country or whether they are extraterritorial like GDPR, that come in and actually put some guidelines and some constraints as to what we can and cannot do from an AI perspective. And I think those are different pieces, as far as I'm concerned, that we need to really keep an eye on if we want to continue to be successful and continue to grow this AI and ML world.
So some of the challenges I think we're going to face is as we build and deploy a lot more AI solutions, I think how do you productionize them? And how do you then keep them going, right? So everyone that is working on these kinds of products at Hulu today, think of it as a great adventure. It's an ad hoc-y, researchy kind of job, and once you get it into production, you can't move off and do something else. I mean, this is a living thing that you have to keep viable. You've got to figure out when it's deteriorating, when do you need to rebuild. Even if it is self-learning, there still has parameters that you have to, evaluate and make sure that it's not going off in a direction that is not worth us pursuing. So some of it is just having the discipline once you put it in to make sure that's running well and that you are monitoring it and making sure you're keeping it on the right track.
So I would say two things. One is start simple. As data scientists, they love to build the most complex models. They come there, I want to build a neural network. That's fun, that's what you want to do. But then you put in production, it doesn't work, right? So maybe that's obvious, but I see a lot of people coming in and trying to build the most complex models. But I think you can get 80% or 90% there with a very, very simple model. And if it works or it doesn't work, you're going to know why. And then you get to the more complex solutions iteratively. So that's one thing that I would say. The other one is more specific. I think it's important, at least for my business, that you have the data science build the code that goes in production. So I've seen organizations where the data scientists build a prototype and then they pass that on to an engineering group and the engineering group productizes that. So that slows down the process so much. And then if something goes wrong, you need to update the model, then it has to go again, engineering and then data science. And so that doesn't work. So the way we try to organize ourselves is we want to make sure the data science is the one that is putting that model that's writing the production code. Engineering just helps with support of that infrastructure.
Yeah, so anything to add?
Yeah, just something you mentioned, just like the simple model sometimes does the job, and it made me think of what a gentleman was saying yesterday, like break out your college math book. And it's true, sometimes a linear regression is just a fantastic tool, right? And you don't necessarily need a neural net to accomplish what you would. And it'll be so much easier to trace back and fix when you're going down something that's easily understandable, right? Yeah. I agree.
Cool. So one last question before we open up for a question from the audience. Anodot is an AI analytics, and one of the challenges we're having with customers is, I know that there are a few folks here that are coming from digital transformation teams, so they might want to choose to implement Anodot for the organization, but then their customers are not adopting. So the question for you, I'm sure you are experiencing some kind of challenges when you have new technologies, mainly around AI. How do you manage the change and evangelize the technology inside the organization?
That's, I think, the $1,000,000 question, right? Like, if we had the answer to that one, we would all be probably living here year-round. So no, it's a really good question. It's how do you evangelize and how do you bring people around the table? How do you mobilize them around this beautiful vision of AI, or just in general any kind of technology? I don't think it has to just be AI. I think we've seen the same things around BI and around self-service BI, where we wanted to bring all of this value to people and we fall short. And we generally fall short, I think, because of that culture change that we're not that good maybe at implementing, or maybe we just don't take the time to evangelize the information at the right levels in the organization. And one of the things that we are working on is building a data literacy program so that people become more and more aware of data and analytics and how they can leverage it and what does this actually mean in their real life. Not just limit that to a pocket of people, which is your data science team, but expand it to the rest of the organization. And when people learn more about it and they understand it, then I think you're going to have a much easier time selling in those new things across the organization.
I think sometimes you have to influence by example. So, in the many roles that I've played over the years, I've always tried to find a use case that is substantial enough from a, returns perspective, and found a partner that's willing to actually partner with you and build that out, showcase the results. I think once you do that, other people will come in, but you need to have that first use case that you can actually place. Then it becomes easier.
I'm with you as well. I think the primary way to get buy-in is by having results. So if you have significant results, strong results, there's revenue impact, people will get excited, they will believe that there is value, they will see the value. So that's the primary way. I think another way is through education, as you can give seminars to product managers, for example, how machine learning works and the basic concepts. They're interested, right? They want to know how it works. And if you have cool projects that you have fun visualizations, people love that stuff. They think it's cool, even if it doesn't necessarily have too much value. But that's impressive. And yeah, so those are I think the ways that.
So yeah, like to continue on that that thought about talking to people and showing them fun stuff. Like one of the things that we've done, and I really encourage you guys to have this inside your organizations, is creating a group, creating this team that's maybe not all part of the same team. We have something that we call the Data and Analytics Society of Aldo. And it's one of my teammates that decided to create this group, and we meet every so often, and it's just over lunch, and we talk about, and we bring in all the different people that are interested in data, and we have a Slack channel where we share a bunch of information, and we share fun articles, and we share fun facts, and we talk about our projects, and you get people, like you said, like these people in marketing that could be interested in knowing what is a machine learning algorithm and how does it work. You get this excitement built, and people then are much more open to learning about this stuff.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Craig, is that the time when we open it up for questions?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great discussion. I'm curious about the comments that were made about the. I'm curious about the comments that were made probably by David and Jaya about the kind of the concept of build it and they will come. So there are capabilities and there are use cases to use the capabilities. So I just want to be absolutely clear about what you mean, which one you mean. Before I give you an example, if you decide to buy a car, directionally you need a car. So you go buy a car. If you take the car for a spin around your house as a first use case, that doesn't diminish the fact that neither the car nor the potential future use of the car. So what do you think about these scenarios in this context? Your organization is going to need machine learning. They're going to need AI. So would it be appropriate to start building these capabilities and building the ecosystem that can develop these things and operationalize them without being attached to a use case or being attached to an internal use case that you just use it to flesh out the details in the environment? I'm curious to hear your thoughts about that.
My point about the build it and they will come approach doesn't necessarily work. I mean, if you think about, quick example that comes to mind, building a massive data warehouse because we want to have all of our data in there, or building that massive data lake because we need to store all of the data and we're going to store all the data and then we're going to start using it. building that whole thing out before you actually know how you're going to utilize it is definitely not as valuable as actually identifying a use case and building based on that use case. And then you continue to add as your use cases develop and as you're generating value. And that's more where I was heading with that comment.
It's pretty much similar there as well. When I think about build it and they will come, one of the examples that we had was one of our data scientists decided, wouldn't it be cool if we sent personalized emails, welcome emails to our subscribers. And they went off, built a model, and started talking to the marketing team. The marketing team had no way to operationalize this. And so, it was a set of models that really never went into production because there was no real clear understanding with the business that this was something that they could operationalize. This was something that could create value. So that's kind of, in my sense, they built something expecting someone to use it, and when that didn't happen, it's just a bad experience for the data scientists.
And can I add to that? So in my previous role at PayPal, I was leading the product management team. And in the product management world, there was this famous quote from Henry Ford. If I'd ask people what they want, they'd tell me, I want faster horses, right? So it's, at the end of the day, he understood that people really want. What was their need to move faster from point A to point B, and he built a car. So that's kind of the way I see it. It's to understand what is the business needs and the value what we can deliver through technology. And that means that sometimes we will develop something that the business didn't ask for, but we understand where they need to go.
So it's interesting that you're talking about that welcome email, because we just went through a very, very similar initiative where you want to accelerate and improve on your whole CRM initiatives. And we actually did that with the CRM team, right? We didn't do that on the side, go out and build it, and then tell them, hey, you guys should be using this. It was actually a joint initiative between members of the data team and members of CRM and members of omnichannel and e-com, and it was really like that joint effort. And now we're building out, as we're building out a data lake and we're selecting to introduce data sources into there, well, we know that this is a place where there's definite value, where there's an appetite from that CRM team and the e-com team and in general the organization to go down that path. So let's identify the 2-3 use cases, let's bring in those data sources, let's generate that value, and while that value is being generated, let's start looking at the next data sources that we would be ingesting in order to continue to grow the data lake into that place where then it'll become that massive exploratory data environment, right?
Perfect. Any other questions?
So a lot of these challenges, especially as you get into true artificial intelligence and deep learning, requires machine-readable data. And so we know all these organizations have lots of data. Where are your organizations at as far as making, I guess, all of that or a percentage of that actually machine-readable versus today being resting in place and human-readable only?
Rusting data, what a terrible problem to have. The way we're addressing ensuring that our data is fit for use is, so we have, I'm in charge of this data governance program. We also have a master data team that ensures the data quality. We're looking at data stewardship to ensure that we have proper ownership and proper management of the data. And again, I just want to bring it back to the point of the talk that happened yesterday where the gentleman was talking about radioactive data. It's finding those pockets of data that are critical and then making sure that they are in a format or in a place that can be utilized by those machine learning algorithms that we want to deploy.
I think, a lot of things that we are going to be doing over the next couple of years is actually making sure that we are building off of what we have. And there is a lot of data that we already have that we're not leveraging. Trying to figure out how we leverage that data is probably going to be where we're going to be focusing on. When we think about video streams and things like that, the data is fairly machine readable anyway, and so we do have a head start in that sense that a lot of our data is already in the format that we can look at. Clearly, the volume of data is enormous, so that does have some limitations, but that's kind of where we stand today.
Yeah, I would say that similarly, I mean, our data is digital and it's available for consumption. Our warehouse make that data available. But you can take one step further, and which is how do you make sure that not only the data can be consumed by data scientists, but is ripe and already pre-processed for consumption by a model, right? So that's the idea of feature store, right? So you want to take one step further from the warehouse. You want to have a set of curated features that can be reused by a bunch of different models, right? So if you achieve that, every time they need to build a model, it becomes a lot faster, and it just speeds up your whole process.
And if you add to that, and the same feature store is also used for scoring, where you are actually updating the feature store in real time or every day or what have you, then you don't even have the problem of translating from your model development sample to a production sample. So you could actually get 2 for the price of 1 if you build it correctly.
Cool. Any more questions?
Hi. I'm not sure whether this is maybe a broader topic. There's a lot of talk of end-to-end business processes, and the gentleman, Aldo, you talked about algorithms to match shoes and shirts or something like that. Is that right? Shoes with something else?
You can match it with different items. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish, but yes.
So, like, with chatbots, for example, and the ownership of the end-to-end, have you guys created these business processes and been like, I don't want to own this process anymore? Like, I've created this. Like, you don't want to be in the merchandising business or chatbots, like you create this chatbot thing and then all of a sudden you're the customer service manager. Do you guys have this experience of like, well, all of a sudden like you're deploying a business process, but you don't necessarily want to be the business process owner of this whole thing? Does that make sense?
Right, I kind of see where you're going, but my role is not to own a business process, right? So I don't think it is our jobs to own business processes. I think we embed ourselves at different levels and at different nodes within a business process to support the activities, right? So a business process, if you're giving the chatbot example, it's not something that I've played with. But if I think of a chatbot case, we have a call center and there's a chatbot and people can communicate back and forth with it instead of calling the agents. Yeah, my team might develop the model to be able to, or acquire a tool, and because you don't necessarily develop everything, right? Some stuff is just better to buy because you can't do everything. You got to choose the right ones. But once you've done that, you're supporting it because it's a model that you want to continue to evolve and you want to continue to grow. But we're not managing the process of having a communication and who's logging that communication and who's going to action it if the customer's not happy, et cetera, et cetera. That's not at all our responsibility. I don't know if you guys have a different view.
No, like I said before, one of the problems I see as this matures is how do you let go, right? And there is no let go. If you build a model, your team is going to be responsible for making sure that that model is up to date, it's getting the latest data. If you build it self-learning, even then you need to, take some care of that. So those are things that when you insert yourself within processes with algorithms, you have to know at the back of your mind, it's not I'm going to swoop in, build it, and get out of the process. It is a much more long-lived situation. So plan for it and make sure that that some part of your time is going to go in that.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of when you deploy a model, people will be coming back to you to say things. Some things are good, some things that are not good. For example, if you build a recommender system, you will get people coming to you and say, "Oh, there is a bug here. This product is not similar to this product." But they don't understand that the algorithm tried to get the most similar product, and there was nothing closer. There was similar. So that comes up a lot, and sometimes there are nuances that it's difficult for people to understand. So you have to not only fix things, but there's this process of trying to educate people to understand how the algorithm actually works and why they are seeing things that they are seeing, and why certain things are just not trivial to solve or change with the current technology.
Yeah, and I guess at the end of the day, all of us are technology enablers. We provide tools to the business to operate in a more optimized way. So we don't need to own the process, but to provide the right tools. Thank you very much. Thank you guys for